He's already been dead and it's messed with his head. It's John's post-life crisis.
Welcome to John's Post-Life Crisis. I am your host, John Johnston, manager, guy, founder of CornNation.com, your Nebraska Cornhuskers site of much joy because it's a holiday season and we've had a shitty football season. Whatever. I have to start. Let's start over. I never say swear words on this podcast. Dang it. Okay. I've had that kind of morning.
It's because you have a New Yorker on the call. That's why I brought out the swear word on you.
I actually did have a conversation this morning about a New York consulting firm that's been a large pain in my ass. So yeah, that is actually true. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to John's Post-Life Crisis. I am your host, John Johnston, founder, manager of CornNation.com, your Nebraska Cornhusker site of joy because it's the holiday season, not because of this football season. I am talking with Aaron Breitman, managing editor of On the Bank, SBNation's Rutgers site. Aaron, the first thing we're going to start with is Nebraskans don't know much about Rutgers. I mean, really, when it comes down to it. So could you explain the On the Banks, the name?
Yeah. So Rutgers is located in central New Jersey, and there's a large river called the Raritan River that basically runs through campus. Rutgers is, the state university. There's 5 campuses, all very close together, and the Raritan River runs through it. So the term "on the banks" is actually in the alma mater song for the school. Rutgers is the 8th oldest, university in the country. So it's always been referred to as on the banks when you're at Rutgers. So that's where the name for the site came from.
Wow. Well, at least you did that. Corn Nation, was the dumbest name I could have possibly come up with. I tell you what, I don't think I've ever told people this, but the reason why I named the site Corn Nation is because at the time we had an athletic director, whose name I used to not mention, but I'll mention it, was Steve Peterson. And I figured the guy was such a megalomaniac, he would go around and sue everybody that had Huskers in the name. So I picked the most generic name I could, which was also a really stupid name. So Corn Nation was born 14 years ago. Okay, Rutgers football. I'm sure you can pass that bit of trivia on to excite people during your holiday parties and
I will.
Zoom. Woo. Okay, Greg Schiano has returned to Rutgers football. He's had an impact. I mean, let's face it, before this season, Rutgers football, I don't know how many games you've lost in a row, but you've certainly won more games this season than Nebraska has with our native son, Coach Scott Frost. Tell us about Greg Schiano. Were you happy to see him come back? What do you think of the impact he's made? And where do you think Rutgers is going to go from here?
So to start, yes, it was a 21-game losing streak to begin this season. Chris Ash, the former head coach, won 3 Big Ten games total in his 4 seasons. So what Schiano has done this season has been nothing short of remarkable. Yes, I was definitely in the camp of the day Ash was fired. I said it has to go to Schiano in terms of at least, doing everything you can to sign him. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But there was no better choice. And it's funny now in a pandemic world, it's even more the case. But there was no one that could come to Rutgers and make the kind of immediate impact that he could and has done. Just due to his credibility within the state. I know that, other fan bases across the Big Ten didn't really understand, why Schiano was such a, sought after name for Rutgers. But just based on what he did, if you think about, the last 50 years really of Rutgers football, no one has been able to make them a consistent winner and recruit the state the way he has. and that was the big draw. But his credibility within the state with high school coaches, what his credibility for building them into a consistent winner, annual bowl team, albeit in the Big East, not the Big Ten, just gave a sense of confidence among the fan base and united the fan base in a way I've never seen. There was a campaign to raise over $300,000 to hire him. I know that's kind of chump change, but for Rutgers, traditionally a very small lagging behind in terms of donors, which has changed the last few years under Pat Hobbs, the athletic director. But my point is, when talks fell apart during the negotiations, the fan base had an uproar that I've never seen, that kind of restarted. You had the governor of New Jersey getting involved. That probably is normal for football crazy Midwest, but not in New Jersey. So it made all the sense in the world to bring him back. He's probably established the best coaching staff in program history, just in terms of skill, coaching ability, and recruiting, and it's paid immediate dividends. Schiano's done a good job of bringing in a lot of Big Ten transfers from other programs that have made an impact. Aaron Cruikshank from Wisconsin, as you know, obviously Vedral from Nebraska. And you have Michael Dumfour from Michigan, Brendan White from Ohio State. All four of those guys played at their schools and then came to Rutgers and have made a huge impact. But the majority of the roster is still the same. And the player development that you've seen, and with no spring practice, no traditional off season, a truncated preseason in the middle of the school year, what they've gotten out of these guys has really been amazing. And he's completely transformed the culture. They've gone from probably the softest team in the Big Ten, just from a mental and physical standpoint, to a team I think that no one really wants to play. Extremely tough physically and mentally. And, mantras can be corny, no pun intended on coordination, but keep chopping has been his mantra from his first tenure, and the players have completely bought into it, and they just don't quit. And they're certainly an example. They're not a good football team, but they're an example of the all the parts of the whole sum being better than any individual parts, and they've really gotten the most out of their team this season.
So whenever I look at Rutgers, I look at a school that has a lot of fractured, a lot of split between the faculty, the academic side of the school, and athletics. And
Right.
The athletic department, we're constantly hearing about how broke they are. They don't have any money, how far in debt they are. And then the academic people come and pile on. I'm missing the name of the Rutgers professor there that wrote the book a few years ago about Confessions of a Spoil Sport. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Explain to us, is that attitude correct about Rutgers that I have?
Yeah, the school's kind of
split.
Yeah, there is a kind of a split and divide. There was even dating back, 20 years ago, there was a petition where the faculty wanted Rutgers to, join something like the Patriot League, or, they played teams like Colgate and even Princeton, Ivy League teams back in the 50s and 60s. And there was a certain push to return to that. The faculty has been very against the spending money. There's been a lot of short-sightedness in the value that the Big Ten brings to the university. Obviously, we know, in terms of acclaim and for the research side of things, certainly benefits the school, but also just athletically, name recognition, people forget, but in 2006, when Rutgers had their best season ever and were, in the top 10, and their enrollment or applications for that following school year was like record breaking by like fivefold from the past. So there's certainly value to your sports and athletic department, having success. The new president, thankfully, Jonathan Holloway, who comes from Northwestern, values and sees it that way as well. So that's been a loss for the academic side, who have been, were hopeful the new president would see it more their way. But, Yeah, the athletic department's been in debt for a while, heavily subsidized by the state. Certainly something that has to change. But part of that is, as Nebraska fans know, not getting a full share from the Big Ten for a long time. That's been part of it too. So and Rutgers was, Nebraska and even Maryland, you were much better positioned to join the Big Ten than Rutgers ever was. In terms of as an athletic department, success wise, but also coming from another major conference. The Big East was not what the ACC and Big 12 was in terms of revenue share, but also just the infrastructure that Rutgers had facility wise. So many old buildings and athletic facilities that have improved a lot the last few years. But Rutgers was, and I think the administration was kidding themselves that they had no idea the level of commitment they needed to join the Big Ten. And I think that now you have an administration that understands it, and we're seeing the benefits of that. And I think Rutgers is as well positioned for success long term as they ever have been. But it's it's going to take a while. But having Schiano back has certainly aligned the alumni. I think obviously donors have been down because of the pandemic, but I think with what you've seen on the field, things are obviously going to they're on the right direction. I think. Positivity is at an all-time high.
Okay, let's switch to football. You guys picked up one of our guys, Noah Vedral, very well loved in Nebraska. And in fact, Nebraska's been bad enough this year that people are like, well, they shouldn't have let that guy go to Rutgers. He got injured in what looked like a dirty play against Maryland last week, where a guy twisted his ankle when he was laying on the ground. What do you think? Number one, what do you think of Vedral? And number two, what do you think of the play?
Yeah, Vedral's been, it's been a little bit of a split on him just in terms of, he struggled a little bit in the passing game. He had some turnover issues earlier in the season, but I think it's hard to let that negate all the positives that he's brought. He's led the offense very well. He has a great understanding of the offense. This is Rutgers' 11th offensive coordinator in 11 seasons. So, that's obviously been a huge issue. Sean Gleason, the offensive coordinator, has run a spread offense similar to what Vedral was used to under Frost. It's been different this year because Gleason's had to adapt to the personnel he's inherited. Which was obviously a smart decision. I don't think the offense is being run 100% the way it's going to be run long term once they get their own players in. But Vedral's done a great job in terms of just becoming a leader right away. I've been very impressed with how he's handled himself. The players seem to love him. He's put a lot of listen. He's not breaking any records, but we're talking about a Rutgers offense that scored 51 points in 9 Big Ten games last year. They've scored over 20 in 7 of 8 games. They're averaging close to 30 points a game. He's certainly made some throws that no Rutgers quarterback has made really since 2014, their best season in the Big Ten with Gary Nova. So, Vedral certainly has his limitations, but I think that he's done a good job overall. I think it'll be interesting to see what the coaching staff does in the offseason in terms of if they bring in another grad transfer to compete. And the former starter who came in relief this past weekend, Artur Zakowski, certainly not as good of a fit for the offense, but he has improved. So it's certainly not Vedral's, spot long-term necessarily, but I think, he certainly held himself with class, and I think he's well respected. And I think he certainly is a competent quarterback for them. Whether he plays this weekend, Schiano was talked about it yesterday, and they really don't know. He's getting a lot of treatment. I do agree it was a dirty play. It was one of several that Rutgers took. That the Olakunle, here's the name for you, Olakunle Fatukazi, the leading tackler in the country, goes by 03 on the defense. He was also hurt on a dirty play by an offensive lineman on Maryland. There were several dirty hits. Schiano would not discuss the dirty hits, but he did say it was the most he's ever been on the field during a game to check on players. So the health of Rutgers overall is a big question mark for this game, especially on short rest on Friday, to see, who's going to be available. But obviously, storyline wise, you couldn't make this up with Vedral playing Nebraska. in terms of having an opportunity to play them. We'll see what happens, but I think that if he does, if it's pretty clear he's not physically capable, I think they'll probably make a change pretty quickly. But for his sake, I hope he can start the game.
Who is the next guy up at quarterback, and what have you seen from him?
So Artur Zakowski, he was the starter as a freshman in 2018, got completely thrown to the wolves, former four-star traditional drop-back passer, led the country in interceptions, was improved last year. They brought in a grad transfer. He lost the job in the opening week, regained the job, looked pretty good, and then decided to redshirt after Ash was fired. He took a little bit of heat for that, but I think it's hard to fault a player for looking out for his best options, especially when the interim coach, the offensive coordinator, was fired too. So they completely changed the offense literally from 1 week to the next. So you can't really blame him. He's had a great attitude, team first attitude, and he came in. He's had limited action all year. Came in, started for Vedral at Purdue, threw 2 touchdown passes early, and then Rutgers shifted to Johnny Langen, who is a third quarterback that they use in spot duty with running packages, RPO packages, and he kind of just took over that game against Purdue in the win. They couldn't stop the run of Rutgers. So, but in this game last week against Maryland, it was Zakowski that won it, coming in late third quarter for Vedral. And so, yeah, he's certainly capable, definitely a different type of quarterback than Vedral. But, I think there's confidence that he could do a good job there as well.
So you guys, running back and receivers, what are we looking at? Who's going to score the points against Nebraska?
Well, Bo Melton is Rutgers' best player, wide receiver. He has 9 touchdowns this season, 6 receiving wise. He had 2 rushing touchdowns this past week against Maryland, which was kind of a new wrinkle in terms of it was reverse sweeps and pitches that he got the ball, and he was very effective that way. He also has a punt return. So getting him involved is essential. And then the running back, Isaiah Pacheco, is their best runner. He's kind of had an up and down season, but he had a really good game against Maryland, and he's also a bit of a threat out of the backfield catching the ball. He had 5 or 6 catches this past weekend. So those are your 2 main skill position players to look out for. And I think getting the ball in both of their hands is obviously key against Nebraska.
So on the defense, how is your defense looking? Nebraska just played Minnesota, and we came into that game. They were giving up 6.82 yards per carry, like the worst team in the nation rush defense. And Nebraska lost that game, in case you didn't pay attention. How is your defense? As if it matters, because our offense doesn't seem to score a lot of points anyway.
They, they started the season on fire. Michigan State, they forced 7 takeaways, which was unbelievable. They haven't had nearly that type of success the rest of the season. It's been very much it's a cliche, but the bend, don't break mentality. They have given up a lot of points, a lot of yards, but they've kept Rutgers in most games. Like I said, I say on the defense, they're more health-wise in question than the offense. You Dwumfor on the defensive line get banged up against Maryland. Fatukazi, their best defensive player, is battling an injury. Brendan White, the transfer from Ohio State, he's missed a couple games. We're not quite sure how much he's going to play. Put it this way, at the end of the game against Maryland, they had a freshman walk-on in the secondary. That's how banged up the team is right now. But they're much more aggressive under Schiano and former defensive coordinator Rob Smith, who was at Rutgers years ago, was at Minnesota most recently. He's back. A lot of different blitz packages, a lot of different looks they'll give Nebraska. But Schiano said yesterday when I asked them, the key is stopping the run. They know they have to stop Nebraska's run. And I think it's going to be a challenge. Rutgers struggles with run first teams. Illinois, run, especially quarterbacks that can run. They've really struggled with, against Illinois. They really struggled, and also Penn State. They couldn't really stop the run. So I think it's certainly going to be a challenge against Nebraska.
It's like you just described all the things that we're not going to do. Yeah, I can't explain our offense. I mean, last week against Minnesota, we started the game with a sideways pass that went backwards, and I have no idea what we're doing on offense except not scoring points, which is amazingly how you win football games. Okay, you guys you beat Michigan State to start the season. You beat Purdue. You beat Maryland. You had a close loss to Illinois, and you took Michigan to triple overtime. I mean, you guys you could be at 5-3, could be 5-2 because you got to play all your games this year, which is, were you the only Big team to do that?
It was Rutgers was one of three that played all 8 games. Schiano had said from the beginning, that was their biggest opponent, was staying COVID free and being able to play every week. They did have an outbreak over the summer where the program shut down for 2 weeks and had to be quarantined. They had over 30 people within the program, get COVID. But I think that it actually, obviously you don't want people to get sick, but I think it did kind of help the team reassess their commitment during the season. Schiano's kind of pointed to that, and they've done a great job of staying healthy and being on the field. And this is a team that it's going to take time. They need development. So having all 8 games has really been great for their progress and development. But they also played 8 Big Ten games in 8 weeks in a row. So they're dragging to the finish line from a health and physical standpoint. But at the same time, they're pretty fired up for this game. This would be a chance for, I know it sounds, kind of sad, but Rutgers has never won 4 Big Ten games in a season. So this is, it might sound kind of sad, but this is their Super Bowl, to win 4 Big Ten games after what they've been through, not winning a Big Ten game the 2 previous seasons. It would be kind of a calling card to hold up and be able to show that, the perceptions changed and this program is far different than they were. So you're going to get their best shot from a, effort standpoint. But like I said, penalties have been a problem. Turnovers have come and go, but it's certainly a flawed football team, but they'll certainly give their best effort on Friday night.
Okay. So attitude. You just said, this will be their first time they won 4 games. Immediately, the thought in my head is, well, that's a win for Rutgers because we seem to be really, really good, especially this season, at giving everyone else Christmas presents. So when you look at Rutgers and they go out to play football, I mean, has your attitude changed where you look at them and go, well, they're going to win this game? I mean, when you look at Nebraska coming up, is it your attitude kind of, it had to be really crappy before. It's got to be amazingly better now.
I used to describe it as joyless football. There was, it was a matter of, when was the game over? And for most part, it was before halftime. You're talking about a program that 2 years ago lost to Kansas football by 41 points. So that to me was when it was the low point. I mean, I've said before, they're the unquestioned worst Power 5 team in football the previous 2 years. So, Purdue was weird because that was the first time I was watching and said, you know what? They're going to win this game. You could just tell the way that the momentum was building in the second half that they were going to win. And that was a very strange feeling for Rutgers fans, for sure. I wouldn't say, Rutgers fans are thinking this is definitely going to be a win. I think that we're hopeful, but certainly not overconfident. I think, there's no question Nebraska is the more talented team coming into this game. I think it's just a matter of, how well prepared Rutgers is game plan wise and lately. And I think anytime, for a program like Rutgers, Nebraska, I think is still a name where, a win over that program, whether they haven't won a game or, you're having a good season, it doesn't matter. It still would be a huge victory for a program like Rutgers.
I've always wanted to ask somebody from Rutgers this, so I'm asking you. I got you here. I mean, how have you been? Nebraska fans are not accustomed to this level of badness over time. You know, I mean, we've been bad at points, but this is now lasting. It's like we're in a desert somewhere dying of thirst. How have you been able to maintain being a Rutgers fan when everybody is abusing you repeatedly?
Yeah, it's been something. You know, I've been a fan since the early '80s, and I mean, Rutgers was bad, but you know, decent at times. Then when you know, when I was school in the '90s, you know, we won 8 games my 4 years there. It was Terry Shea was the head coach, and that was considered the worst era of Rutgers football, which was saying something. And then you had Schiano come in a little bit after that, and it took time, you know, 5 years for him to build the program. But you know, and then to see the pro, so it was almost more painful in a way because we finally experienced success, you know, at a certain level of going to a bowl game every year, winning 8 games a year, and then when he left, the program just went downhill again. It was mired by scandal, and then under Ash, you know, being just an awful team, and being on a higher profile in the Big Ten, we certainly took a lot more abuse than we were used to, you know, back in the '90s, and you know, social media, but also not being in as high profile a conference. It was more kind of you know, low key abuse. Where being in the Big Ten, I think there was a lot of anger from certain fan bases of Rutgers even being in the Big Ten. So certainly didn't do them. Rutgers didn't do themselves any favors in terms of being welcomed by how they handled themselves with, you know, a lot of scandals and losing and just being embarrassing on the field and off. So I did understand the backlash a little bit, but you know, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but we had the same issues with basketball as well. So we got it on both ends for years, and it's certainly been a fun time the last year or two, seeing having hope on both sides. But yeah, I would say that. Not from my personal standpoint, but I think we have a lot of distractions here. You know, there's a lot of professional sports teams too. So with the Giants and you know, baseball with the Yankees, you know, a lot of Rutgers fans are fans of good professional teams. So I think that maybe helped a little bit. But for me, I was just a tortured soul.
You know, I might be referring to myself to that. Well, let's see what happens. You know, I mean, it's kind of interesting, the dichotomy between us, because I mean, you're going to have positive thoughts. I think pretty much no matter what, if you win or lose this game in Nebraska, I think Nebraska fans are looking at, you know, if we lose this game, we're going to have to endure 9 months of just really bad attitudes. And I hate to be, you know, selfish, but I have to run a website that's based on Nebraska football and bad attitudes for 9 months. So you better damn well lose. Okay. I can't, you've been dealing with bad things for years. Just one more week or 9 more months, the hell with you. Do you want to make a prediction?
Well, first I'll say I can offer my services from a therapeutic perspective if you do lose, because I know what it's like to run a website where your team is awful and there's nothing good to write about, and you're just grasping for straws on something good to cover. So I totally get that. Yeah, you know, I hadn't really thought about a prediction yet, but I do think Nebraska is going to win. You know, I really do. I think it'll be a close game, and I think. I think it'll probably be in the 20s. It's going to be, for what it's worth, you know, now that the game's Friday night, it's going to be extremely cold. I think it's going to be, you know, in the teens weather-wise, you know, anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees. We're supposed to get we're supposed to get over a foot of snow Wednesday night into Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see when Nebraska actually gets into New Jersey. But it's going to be cold. So I think it's going to be, I don't expect a shootout by any means. And I think Nebraska wins 27-20.
You know what? I never pick against Nebraska because I'm that kind of guy. You know, my fandom, my hope relies on somewhat homerism and somewhat being the honestly, a Pollyanna type optimist that, yeah, this is the day, this is the game, this is the moment. We're down by 83 points. We're going to pull this out. I do that all the time. And it's really, I run coordination because doing this is cheaper than hiring mental health care specialists.
I understand that.
Yeah. I'd say 20, you're probably right. I'd see if I wanted it's going to be a complete homer, I'd say 45-21 Nebraska, because for me, I think we're going to score over 40 points every game because that's where we win. If we score 40 points, we're going to win. But we don't score 40 points. We score like 20. So I'd go 24-23 Nebraska just because, there you go.
All right.
Is there anything else you need to add on the behalf of Rutgers before we go?
No, I think you actually said something very, very that you hit the nail on the head in terms of no matter what happens in this game, unless it's a 50-0 blowout, I think it's going to be hard for Rutgers fans to not have anything but a great taste in their mouth, so to speak, for this season in terms of where we've been and where we're going. It's going to take a while, but I think, it's certainly been a great, how about this? The best 3 or 4 win season, the most celebrated 3 or 4 win season of all time, maybe, in terms of how Rutgers fans look at it. So I think as long as they're competitive on Friday, obviously a win would be huge. And I think perception wise, certainly. But at the end of the day, Rutgers fans can't really complain with how this season's gone. So it should be an interesting game, but I do think, it will be close, but yeah, I think Nebraska will win it.
Yeah, you say that, but then you said that thing earlier that we never won 4 Big Ten games. That's it. We're done. We're going to be out of here. I'm going to be finished with this and then spend the whole rest of the week freaking depressed because that line there alone means that you're probably winning this game. This is like the saddest podcast kind of, well, I guess on my side.
Hey, who knows? Maybe Vedral on one leg will go out there and throw 4 touchdowns and 500 passing yards against Nebraska, and that'll really sit well with Husker fans. I highly doubt it, but you're making me think. You're giving me optimism now. That's what's going to happen.
I hope your dreams are crushed, buddy. Okay, this has been John's Post-Life Crisis. We thank Aaron Breitman from On the Banks for joining us, giving us this uplifting, cheery look at the upcoming game with Rutgers. Thank you for listening, and go Big Red.